matter. They think like that because now they are informed. Yeah, the awareness is there. But what happens is, the awareness is very difficult to create. If you put an ad in the paper, or if you put an article in the paper, nobody is going to read it. There's many more interesting articles that you got to read. You read only that which is of interest to you. If there's a big article on thalassemia, and there's a small article about Amitabh Bachchan or something like that, everybody has read the Amitabh Bachchan article, or on Sachin Tendulkar. But there's one 4-column article on thalassemia, nobody has read it. Similarly, if there is something which is shown on television, you have a remote in your hand. It's a very powerful tool. The minute the person says, here is Dr. So-and-so is going to talk on thalassemia, you press the remote, and you switch channels. You jump over to some film or some Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahoti or some sports channel or news channel or whatever that is. So how do we create the awareness? Is a challenge. If there is an ad on television, again there is a remote in your hand. The ad has to be really interesting. The ad has to be done and shown with a great amount of regularity. Only then there is a chance of you seeing that ad. And even then, if you are able to communicate effectively, yes. So the challenge in thalassemia minor, really speaking, is we are dealing with healthy people. What is the problem of thalassemia minor? The problem of thalassemia minor is there is no problem.
Problem is getting a problem child.
I know, but I'm saying the problem with the thalassemia minor is there is no problem. If there had been a problem with me being a thalassemia minor, I would go to suppose because of being a thalassemia minor, I get a headache, or get a boil, or I get some pain. I will go to the doctor and check. And the doctor will check me and finally say, you must go and do a blood test for thalassemia minor. The problem with being a thalassemia minor is that there is no problem. And because there is no problem, you don't go to the doctor. And because you don't go to any doctor, you don't come to know. And then you repent.
The RBC is not having any abnormality.
The RBCs will have some abnormality, So one of the ways in which
it is not noticeable under the microscope.
it is, you can suspect, but conclusively you cannot. See, there are some indices. There are markers which are indicative. For example, you are very right. The RBC indices have to be seen very carefully. Now, when we are doing population screening, we actually look at the MCV and the MCH. If the MCV and the MCH are low, the mean corpuscular volume, and the mean corpuscular hemoglobin, if they are low, then we say, let us now find out, is it iron deficiency, or is it thalassemia minor, or any other hemoglobinopathy? And then you subject the sample. So in population screening, what people do is, see, suppose tomorrow we have to do a screening of the entire population. 400 people come and do the test. Can I pay 600 rupees per test and screen 400 people? 2.4 lakh rupees will be gone down the drain. Okay. So what is done for population screening is, they do what you are suggesting. They actually do a CBC. And by looking at the CBC, actually they can look at the cells also, but looking at the CBC, they look at the MCV and the MCH. If the MCV and the MCH are low, they will now put the sample onto the HPLC machine. So what normally happens in, let's say in Mumbai for example, 100 people come to do the test. If I were to put all those samples on the HPLC machine, it will cost me 100 into 600. Okay, it's a huge amount of money. If I put all samples for CBC first, for me the CBC cost is around 30 rupees. Okay, so 100 samples multiplied by 30 rupees, that is one cost. Then I find that the MCV and the MCH are low for 15 or 12 of those samples. Only those samples are picked and put onto the HPLC machine. And now I brought down the cost of the test. So the RBCs, the RBC indices are indicative, but they are not conclusive. Yeah. Yeah, they are suggestive.
But there are certain recent disorders. Those populations one needs to intensify, like the Lohana community.
Absolutely.
Community,
there are certain communities. There are certain communities which are more high risk than the others actually. The Sindhis, the Punjabis, the Gujaratis, particularly the Lohanas.
Greek.
Yeah, wherever the Greek invasion happened.
And the exception is the Saraswat community along the coast.
And not only that, if you look at the east also, there is thalassemia, a slightly different strain of thalassemia on the east side also. Bengalis also are affected by thalassemia. There is a large percentage of Bengalis who are E-beta thalassemia. Almost 30,000 is the figure that has been given to me of thalassemia major children in West Bengal alone. So that's a different strain of thalassemia, but it's there. So there is actually both the entry points into India which are affected. One entry point into India is to the northwest. Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, that section. And the other entry point into India is through West Bengal, through that area, So these are two places where we have a large percentage of people who are high risk. And you're very right, the initial focus should be to try and target these high risk communities. If you find that there is a community, there is a colony where there is a large Sindhi population, a large Punjabi population, a large Lohana population, a large Banushali population, Kachi Lohana Banushali, you must try and create the awareness and carry this facility, because creating awareness by itself is not enough. Because what happens is, once you create the awareness, if you don't take the facility for testing at that time itself, one day later, the interest in doing the test goes down. 1 week later, it goes on even further. And 1 month later, they've forgotten it. So there's no point in creating awareness and not following up with having a screening test being done over there. Which is what we try to do in all colleges actually. We go to almost every college. For example, today, we are doing it in SIES Nerul. 200 students will get tested today. Another 200 students will get tested on Monday. Maybe 3% of the students will be thalassemia minor. So of the 400 people, maybe 12 people will be thalassemia minor. But for those 12 people, this was the most important test of their lives actually. And they will be counseled later, saying that, don't worry if you are a thalassemia minor. You are a perfectly normal person. You will continue to be healthy. The only thing you need to do is, at the time of getting married, get your partner tested. Yeah. Because what happens when they get this report, a lot of them, they get into a panic. I'm a thalassemia minor, what is wrong with me? The basic purpose of doing a counseling is to tell them, there's nothing wrong with you. Amitabh Bachchan is a minor. Ashmeet Patel in The Big Boss is a minor. Pete Sampras is a minor. Zinedine Zidane is a minor. Physically fit, mentally fit, every way fit. And they continue to be fit. You don't worry if you're a thalassemia minor. The implication of being a thalassemia minor is only to your future child, provided your partner in life is also a thalassemia minor. Pardon?
Plus and minus.
Pardon?
Plus and minus.
So this is what it is. This is what I wanted to share with all of you.
What are medications of desperately?
See, there is...
Desperately is the parenting.
Yeah. Well, basically what happens is, the treatment of a thalassemia major child, the conventional treatment of a thalassemia major child, hinges on two things. One is blood. You need to give blood transfusion to the child from the time the child is born. Okay. And ideally, saline washed packed cells are given. Saline washed packed cells. Packed cells meaning only RBCs have to be given to the child. So you must be aware, when we collect blood, the blood is put in a centrifuge and it's spun, and the RBCs, platelets and plasma are separated out. So the RBCs go to one patient, platelets to another patient, plasma to a third patient. So what is required for these children is only RBCs. RBCs are called as packed cells. In the blood bank lingo, it's called as packed cells. So what is required for the child is packed cells. He doesn't want WBCs and platelets and all that. No, so packed cells have to be given. And whenever you give any of these blood components, the idea is to try and remove all the WBCs. They are the ones who create problems. So WBCs have to be filtered out. And that's why you saline wash it. The WBCs get filtered out. Therefore you give, a good concentration of packed cells only. No WBCs in that. So that's why the children are given saline wash packed cells. Frequency kya hai, all that is decided by the weight of the child, etc., etc. Regularly transfusions have to be given. And by looking at the hemoglobin count at the time of every transfusion, you come to know. Last time I gave transfusion after 15 days, the hemoglobin has gone down considerably. Which means I need to increase the frequency. So I will give now once in 10 days. So it will remain once in 10 days for some time. And then I find that now he needs it more frequent. I'll give it once every week. Okay. So the basic thing the child requires is RBCs. And blood transfusion has to be given to the child. Now when you give blood to the child, there's a lot of problems that can happen to the child. One of the major problems is iron overload. Every time the blood is given, there is a buildup of iron in the body of the child. And it floats in the bloodstream all over the place. It actually gets accumulated in the heart, liver and many other organs. And it can have a fatal effect on the child. In fact, most fatalities that happen among thalassaemic children happen due to problems of iron overload. And therefore, the children have to have a system of disposing of this excess iron. The earlier time-tested method of disposing of the excess iron was Desferal that we talked about, which is injectable. It's given by a slow infusion pump, which means a needle connected to the infusion pump. The infusion pump can be regulated. You can adjust the time for delivery of the injection over a period of 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. The longer you keep it, the better actually. So that was the system of disposing of the excess iron. Then most people could not afford the Desferal because it was very expensive. And secondly, even compliance by the child was a problem, because having a needle in the body every day for 8 hours, the child can object, the child can be very fussy about it, So experts all over the world were trying to develop an oral drug which can be dissolved in water and which can be taken orally. Cipla came out with a drug called Kelfer, and a lot of children were using that drug. And then they came to the conclusion that Kelfer was very good for iron overload in the heart. Desferal was very good for iron overload in the liver. And then Novartis did a lot of research and they came out with another product which was supposed to be good for the heart and the liver and can be orally taken. It's called as Asundra in India, and elsewhere in the world it's called as Exjade. Exjade. E-X-J-A-D-E. Jade. J-A-D-E. Yeah. Elsewhere in the world it's called Exjade. In India it's called Asundra. A-S-U-N-R-A. Asundra. So Asundra, U-N-R-A. Asundra. So Asundra can be put in water and can be drunk. Now Cipla has also replicated that same product, and there are 2 other companies also which have replicated the same product. So today there is a choice of all these 4.
These are all oral now.
These are all oral now, yeah.
So there is no longer need for Desferal?
No, there is a need because what happens is nobody understands which one works for whom. So what happens is those who are used to Desferal, they are very comfortable with Desferal. They feel that this is time tested. We never know all these new medicines that are coming, what side effects they may have. If they are time tested, yes. So there are a lot of children who, in spite of the option of Asundra and all these things being there, continue to use Desferal. And doctors will tell them, whatever works with you, use it. There are a lot of children who use only Kelfer. And it's been going on. And they feel that they are comfortable with that. Their iron levels are kept under control. Therefore, they continue to use that. If you ask the doctor will say, try this. This is a new product. If you have a reaction, if you have a problem, if you have a swelling, if you have a vomiting or something, stop it. If there is any other product which is working with you, continue to use that. But monitor your iron levels from time to time. So every 3 months or every 6 months or so, ideally it should be 3 months, you should monitor your serum ferritin, which is the iron, which indicates the iron level, and you should see whether it's under control. If it's under control, continue to take the same medicines. So the conventional treatment of a thalassemia major child basically hinges on these 2 things: getting getting blood systematically, vaccines, and having the iron removed systematically. And of course, because they are heavily compromised, these children need to be monitored for everything. Heart, liver, everything has to be monitored. So periodically they must do these tests. Some tests once in 6 months, some tests once in a year or so. While they are receiving blood and while they are receiving the iron disposal, they have to do this periodically. This is the conventional treatment of a thalassemia major child. The permanent treatment is a stem cell transplant or a bone marrow transplant, as most people understand. For that, you need an HLA matched donor. A matching donor is required.